He had always believed that life had given him everything he could ever want. From a small apartment and little money, he had built a business empire that stretched across continents. He had a beautiful home, luxury cars, and a life that most people only dreamed about. But the thing that mattered most to him was not his wealth. It was the bond he shared with his mother. She had sacrificed so much to raise him alone after his father passed away. Her hands had grown rough from work, her eyes had grown tired from worry, but she had never complained. She had given him love, guidance, and a strong sense of what was right. His mother lived with him in the grand house he had built. She enjoyed the comfort of wealth, but she valued family more than anything. Every morning she would wake up early, prepare breakfast, and make sure everything was in order before he left for work. Even after he became rich, she never let pride or comfort change her. She still remembered the struggles they had faced and the value of every penny earned. Everyone in his life admired him, but they also admired the way he cared for his mother. He never hesitated to put her needs first, whether it was arranging her favorite flowers in the living room or making sure she had her favorite foods on the table. People often commented that he was a lucky man, but he felt the real luck was having a mother who loved him unconditionally. He had met her a few years ago at a social gathering. She was charming, elegant, and seemed to understand him in ways few people did. She had a way of laughing that made him feel at ease and a way of listening that made him feel truly heard. Over time, they fell in love, and he knew she would be the one he wanted to spend his life with. Friends and family approved, seeing her as a perfect match for him. She seemed kind, patient, and gentle, the kind of person who would fit seamlessly into their family. For a while, everything seemed perfect. He would take her to luxurious dinners, beautiful trips, and introduce her to influential people in his world. She would smile, compliment him, and show interest in his life. To everyone outside the house, she seemed loving and caring, genuinely happy to be part of his world. But as the weeks passed, subtle signs began to appear. It started with little things easily ignored at first. A sharp remark when his mother asked for help with something simple. An eye roll when plans were changed to accommodate family needs. Comments that seemed harmless to outsiders but carried a tone of impatience and criticism when directed at the people closest to him. He noticed, but he told himself it was just stress or a bad day. He didn't want to see flaws in someone he cared about deeply. His mother, however, noticed the changes immediately. She had raised him to see the world clearly and had a keen sense of character. She tried to brush it off, hoping it was a temporary phase. She treated her with kindness, giving her the benefit of the doubt. But she felt a subtle tension in the house that had not been there before, a quiet discomfort that made her chest tighten. Despite this, life moved on. The billionaire continued with his busy schedule, managing meetings, deals, and responsibilities that demanded most of his time. Even in the midst of success, he cherished evenings spent with his mother and fiancée. They would sit together in the living room, talking, laughing, and sharing stories. Yet the small moments of tension began to grow more frequent. She would make impatient gestures when his mother took longer than usual to set the table or prepare tea. She would sigh loudly if she didn't like the way something was done, even though it was meant to be helpful. He started noticing that her smile sometimes didn't reach her eyes when she was around his mother. There were quick, subtle insults disguised as jokes, moments that made him feel uneasy. At first, he dismissed them. He wanted to trust her, to believe that love could overcome small differences in personality. But deep down, a sense of worry began to grow. One afternoon, he was working from home, finishing up some important documents in his study. The sun was streaming through the large windows, casting warm light on the room. He could hear voices from the living room. At first, they seemed normal, but then he caught a tone that made him pause. He listened more carefully. The words were sharp, cutting through the warm atmosphere of the house. She was criticizing his mother in a way that was cruel and unnecessary. It wasn't just impatience or a small frustration. It was intentional, meant to belittle. He could feel his heart tighten as he heard it. He could not believe the words were coming from someone he had trusted so deeply. Each sentence seemed to sting more than the last. His mother, ever patient, tried to respond calmly, hoping to diffuse the tension. She did not raise her voice or retaliate. She simply answered with gentle words, trying to calm the situation. But the fiancée did not relent. She continued, her tone harsh and biting, her words cutting into the calm of the house. He felt a surge of emotions, anger, shock, disbelief, and sadness. The woman he had planned to spend his life with was showing a side he had never imagined. The kindness he thought was genuine now felt like a mask. He left his study quietly, stepping into the living room where the conversation was happening. The moment his presence was felt, she paused, her eyes flicking toward him, but there was no apology in her expression. Instead, there was a hint of irritation, as if she were annoyed at being caught. He took a deep breath, trying to remain calm. He wanted to understand, to confront her with reason rather than anger. He asked her to explain what she had just said. She hesitated, then tried to brush it off as a joke, but he could see the tension in her posture, the way her eyes darted nervously. The truth was undeniable. His mother looked at him with a mixture of sadness and reassurance. She had experienced many trials in her life, and she knew how to stay composed even when hurt. She placed a hand gently on his arm, silently telling him to be patient. Her strength in that moment gave him courage, reminding him why he loved and respected her so deeply. The atmosphere in the room shifted. The warmth of the house seemed to dim, replaced by a heavy weight of reality. He realized that the life he thought was perfect had a serious flaw, one that could not be ignored. The woman he loved had shown her true colors, and there was no going back to the illusions he had held. As the day turned into evening, he sat quietly with his mother, reflecting on what had happened. He felt a deep sadness, but also a sense of clarity. He knew that love must be based on respect, and that no amount of charm, beauty, or wealth could replace genuine kindness. The lessons he had learned in that moment were harsh, but they were necessary. He looked at his mother, feeling a profound gratitude for her wisdom and patience. She had prepared him for life in ways he hadn't fully understood until now. He promised himself that he would protect her, that he would never allow anyone to hurt her. And in that quiet moment, he began to understand the value of true character, realizing that appearances could be deceiving and that genuine love required more than just affection. It required respect, empathy, and integrity. The evening passed, but the events of the day remained vivid in his mind. He knew that the coming days would be challenging, that he would have to make difficult decisions. But he also knew that he could not ignore what he had witnessed. He had seen the truth, and the truth demanded action. For the first time in a long while, he felt a mixture of sorrow and empowerment. Sorrow for the betrayal he had experienced, but empowerment from the clarity he now had. He understood that life was not just about wealth or appearances. It was about protecting the people who mattered most and standing up for what was right even when it was hard. That night he lay awake, thinking about the future. He thought about the lessons he had learned, the mistakes he had unknowingly tolerated, and the choices he would have to make. He knew that this was only the beginning of a journey that would test his values, his patience, and his heart. But he also knew that with his mother by his side, he could face whatever came next. He realized that love was not just about passion or desire. It was about loyalty, respect, and the courage to act when faced with betrayal. And as he drifted to sleep, he made a quiet promise to himself that he would never compromise the well-being of the people he loved, and that he would always seek the truth no matter how painful it might be. The morning after the tense evening, the billionaire woke up feeling a mix of emotions he couldn't easily sort out. The memory of the harsh words still lingered in his mind, and he could not shake the image of the fiancé speaking to his mother with such cruelty. It had been one thing to notice small signs of irritation or impatience, but hearing it so openly and directly was something entirely different. It made him question everything he had believed about her, about their love, and about the future he had imagined. He decided to start his day with a quiet walk in the garden. The fresh air was comforting, and the flowers seemed brighter than usual, as if nature was giving him a moment to breathe and think clearly. His mind, however, was not at ease. Thoughts ran through his head like a storm, memories of their relationship now viewed through a different lens. He thought of the times she had smiled at him and said kind things, and he realized that some of those smiles had not been as genuine as he had believed. He returned to the house to find his mother in the kitchen, preparing breakfast as she always did. She looked up and gave him a gentle smile as if to say, "Everything will be okay." He felt a surge of gratitude and relief. Despite her own feelings, she maintained her calm demeanor, and that strength gave him courage. Over breakfast, he chose to speak openly with her about what had happened. He did not want to pretend that everything was fine, and he trusted her judgment above anyone else's. He recounted the previous evening, his words careful but filled with the raw honesty of his shock and disappointment. His mother listened attentively, nodding occasionally, her eyes filled with understanding. She did not scold him for being hurt or confused. Instead, she offered perspective, reminding him that people's true nature often reveals itself over time. "You did the right thing by noticing it," she said softly. "Love is not blind. It sees, it feels, and it knows when something is wrong. It is not weakness to acknowledge it. It is wisdom." Her words struck a chord deep inside him. He realized that he had been so focused on what he wanted to see, on what he had imagined the relationship to be, that he had ignored the signs he should have paid attention to. This acknowledgement was painful but necessary. Later that morning, he called one of his closest friends, someone he trusted implicitly, to discuss what had happened. He did not want to act rashly, and he needed advice from someone who knew him well and understood the weight of the situation. His friend listened quietly, letting him speak without interruption, and then offered guidance with a calm, steady voice. "You need to observe, but do not ignore," the friend said. "Pay attention to her actions, not just her words. People reveal themselves through repeated behavior, not occasional gestures. Make sure you have clarity before you decide your next step." The billionaire knew his friend was right. He decided to take a step back and watch carefully. He wanted to understand the full extent of her character before making any decisions. Over the next few days, he began paying closer attention to her interactions, her tone, her patience, and her demeanor, with not just his mother, but with everyone around her. He noticed subtle manipulations, small attempts to control conversations, and moments where kindness seemed forced or absent entirely. Meanwhile, his mother continued to provide support. Not through dramatic speeches, but through quiet presence. She remained her gentle, wise self, showing that strength did not always need to be loud. Her composure reminded him of all the lessons she had taught him growing up, the importance of patience, observation, and integrity. He realized that her way of handling situations was more powerful than any dramatic confrontation. The fiancée, sensing the shift in his attention, tried to regain the warmth and charm she had displayed in the early days of their relationship. She attempted to engage him with flattery, small gifts, and pleasant conversation, but he was no longer easily swayed. He had seen the real side of her, and while he did not wish to punish her, he knew he could not ignore what he had witnessed. He also noticed her behavior with his mother continued to show subtle cracks. Even when smiling, there was a tension in her gestures, an impatience that bubbled just below the surface. It was a stark contrast to his mother's consistent kindness and calm demeanor. The billionaire found himself increasingly protective of his mother, watching for moments where she might be hurt or belittled. One afternoon, he observed a particularly revealing incident. They were preparing for a small family gathering, and his mother was arranging the table. She took extra care to make everything beautiful, paying attention to details that mattered to the guests. The fiancé, however, grew impatient, snapping at minor issues and making thinly veiled critical remarks. The billionaire felt a surge of anger but held himself back, remembering his mother's advice to observe, not act rashly. He made a mental note of every detail, knowing that this pattern could not be ignored. As the gathering proceeded, he noticed how guests interacted with her. Some were initially charmed by her elegance and apparent sophistication, but others seemed unsettled by subtle comments or behaviors that bordered on condescending. It became clear that while she could maintain a polished facade, cracks in her character were visible to those paying attention. The billionaire felt a mix of disappointment and relief. Disappointment for the person she truly was, and relief that he had now fully seen her character before any irreversible commitments were made. That evening, he sat alone with his mother in the quiet of the house. The sun was setting, casting warm golden light across the living room. They spoke about life, about choices, and about the importance of surrounding oneself with people of integrity. His mother shared stories from her own past, times when she had to make difficult decisions to protect herself and those she loved. She emphasized the value of clarity and the courage it takes to act in alignment with one's principles. Her words resonated deeply with him. He realized that love alone was not enough. True love required respect, trust, and a willingness to protect the ones you cared about from harm, even when that harm came from someone you loved. He understood that the fiancé's behavior was a warning. a clear sign that she did not share the values that were most important to him and his family. Over the following days, he took time to reflect, journal, and even meditate. He wanted to approach the situation with a clear mind, free from the influence of anger or impulse. He also had conversations with close colleagues and trusted advisors, carefully framing the situation without revealing unnecessary personal details. They provided guidance on maintaining composure, observing behavior, and preparing for difficult conversations if necessary. Throughout this period, his mother remained a constant source of strength. She never pushed him toward a decision but offered quiet encouragement and wisdom. She reminded him that life's most important choices were rarely easy, but they shaped the character and direction of one's life. Her calm confidence helped him realize that standing up for what was right, even when uncomfortable, was a reflection of true love and loyalty. As he navigated these challenging days, he also observed his own emotions. He noticed a growing sense of empowerment, an understanding that he had the ability to protect his family and make decisions that aligned with his values. He recognized that ignoring the warning signs would only lead to regret and hurt in the future. By the end of the week, he had gathered enough clarity. He had observed repeated behaviors, subtle manipulations, and moments of cruelty that could not be explained away. He knew that the fiancée's charm and outward elegance were only a mask, hiding a character incompatible with the values he cherished. The decision he had to make was becoming clearer, even though it would be difficult. He felt a mixture of sorrow and resolve. Sorrow for the love he had believed in and the future he had imagined. Resolve because he now understood what was necessary for his family's well-being and his own peace of mind. He realized that protecting those he loved sometimes meant making painful choices, and that courage was not the absence of fear, but the willingness to act despite it. The fiancée noticed the change in him and grew more anxious. She tried to charm him to redirect his attention to regain control, but he remained steady, observing without judgment, noting every gesture, word, and expression. He understood now that actions revealed truth far more than words ever could. In this period of observation, reflection, and quiet confrontation with reality, the billionaire learned an invaluable lesson that wealth, power, and outward appearances could not substitute for genuine character. He also realized the depth of his bond with his mother, a relationship built on love, respect, and unwavering loyalty. He felt gratitude for her presence, guidance, and strength, knowing that she would continue to be his anchor through difficult times, and so, as the days passed, he prepared himself for what he knew would come next. The clarity he had gained, the observations he had made, and the lessons he had learned gave him confidence. He understood that difficult decisions awaited, but he also knew that he would face them with honesty, integrity, and courage. He was ready to protect the people who mattered most, to act when necessary, and to ensure that respect, kindness, and loyalty remained at the heart of his life. The next few days were filled with a heavy silence that lingered in every corner of the house. The billionaire went about his daily routine, but there was a quiet storm building inside him. He had seen enough to know that the woman he loved was not who she appeared to be. The truth had settled in his heart like a weight he could not ignore. Still, he wanted to be sure. He wanted to give her one last chance to show that there might still be some kindness in her. But deep down, he already knew the answer. His mother remained calm, her presence grounding him through the confusion. She went about her daily tasks, pretending not to notice the growing tension, but he knew she felt it too. They often shared quiet glances, small exchanges that carried understanding without words. She didn't tell him what to do, but her silence spoke volumes. She trusted him to do the right thing when the time came. The fiancé, on the other hand, seemed increasingly restless. She could sense that something had changed. The warmth in his eyes was not as bright as before. His laughter less frequent, his too, more distant. She tried to act as if nothing was wrong, but beneath her calm smile was irritation. She was used to being admired and adored, and she did not like the feeling of slipping control. One afternoon, he decided to invite her for a private lunch on the terrace. The air was light, the garden blooming with color. It was the kind of peaceful setting that once brought them closer. He wanted to see if she could speak honestly, if she could acknowledge her behavior or show genuine remorse. He spoke gently, mentioning that he had noticed tension between her and his mother. He asked if everything was fine, hoping she would take the chance to speak truthfully. Instead, she smiled faintly and dismissed his concerns. She blamed his mother, saying she was overly sensitive and difficult to please. She made herself the victim, twisting the situation in a way that painted her as misunderstood. He listened quietly, but each word she spoke pushed him further away. He realized she wasn't just unkind, she was unwilling to take responsibility. That hurt more than anything. His mind wandered to his mother's words from a few nights ago. People show who they are when things don't go their way. He understood now that kindness should never be selective. The woman sitting across from him had love only when things benefited her. That wasn't love at all. After that conversation, his heart grew still. The illusions had finally broken. He began preparing himself for the inevitable end, though it was painful. He knew ending the engagement would not just break a relationship. It would also cause a public stir. People would talk, the media would speculate, and many would misunderstand. But he couldn't let public opinion dictate his conscience. He spent the next few days avoiding confrontation, focusing instead on work. But even in his meetings and business discussions, his thoughts drifted back to his mother and the way she had been treated. It hurt him deeply to imagine her sitting quietly, hiding her pain to protect him. The thought alone strengthened his resolve. He decided that before ending things, he needed to be absolutely sure she had no intention of changing. A few days later, his chance came unexpectedly. He had a meeting in the city that ended earlier than planned. On his way home, he decided to stop by a small cafe near their house to pick up his mother's favorite pastries. As he pulled up the driveway and entered the house, he heard voices from the living room. His mother's voice was calm but firm, while the fiancé's tone was sharp and impatient. He stood quietly by the doorway, listening. The fiancé was scolding his mother about a small mistake, a vase that had been moved from one table to another. It was a meaningless detail, yet she was speaking as though it were some grave offense. Her words were laced with contempt. She accused his mother of being old-fashioned, out of touch, and unfit to live in a modern household. The billionaire's chest tightened as he listened. He could hear the pain in his mother's voice as she tried to stay composed. Something inside him snapped. He stepped into the room, his footsteps heavy but calm. The fiancée froze the moment she saw him, her face changing from irritation to shock. For a brief second, silence filled the room. His mother stood still, her eyes meeting his, filled with quiet sadness. He walked closer, his expression unreadable, and asked her to explain herself. She stumbled over her words, trying to twist the story again, claiming his mother had been rude to her. But the billionaire had seen and heard enough. He stopped her gently and said in a calm but firm voice, "I was here. I heard everything." The words hung in the air, and for the first time she seemed to realize the gravity of what she had done. Her eyes darted around, searching for an escape. But there was none. The truth was standing right in front of her. He didn't raise his voice or accuse her harshly. Instead, he spoke with quiet disappointment. He told her that respect for family was non-negotiable, that kindness was the foundation of love, and without it, nothing could last. His tone was calm, but the pain behind it was unmistakable. His words carried the weight of heartbreak, the heartbreak of seeing someone he trusted reveal a side so cruel. The fiancée tried to apologize, her voice trembling slightly, but it was too late. Her apologies felt rehearsed, empty. His mother, ever graceful, simply said that she wanted peace in her home and no ill will toward anyone. The billionaire nodded and asked his mother to go rest. Once she left the room, he faced the fiancée one last time. He told her that he couldn't move forward with their engagement. He said that he had seen how she treated his mother, and that it went against everything he stood for. Her eyes widened with disbelief. She accused him of overreacting, of letting his mother influence him. But he remained steady. He told her that love was not control and that no amount of charm or beauty could make up for a lack of compassion. She grew angry then, her tone sharp and defensive. She said things meant to hurt him, but he didn't respond. He simply walked to the window, staring out at the garden where his mother often spent her mornings. The sight gave him strength. When he turned back, his expression was calm. He asked her to leave the house quietly and respectfully. He didn't want drama or humiliation. He just wanted peace. She left that evening without another word. The silence that followed felt both painful and freeing. He stood by the window long after her car disappeared down the driveway. The house felt different now, quieter, lighter, as though a shadow had been lifted. His mother came to him later that night. She found him sitting in the living room, the fireplace glowing softly. She didn't say much, just sat beside him, her hand resting gently on his arm. After a long silence, she spoke softly. "You did the right thing, even if it hurts now." He nodded, unable to speak for a moment. Then he said, "I just wish I had seen it sooner. I let my feelings blind me." His mother smiled faintly. "That's not weakness," she said. "That's love. And love always teaches us something, even when it ends." Her words brought him peace. He realized that while he had lost a relationship, he had gained clarity, a deeper understanding of what truly mattered in life. He had learned that love built on appearance or convenience could never compare to love rooted in respect and sincerity. The days that followed were quiet but peaceful. The house began to feel warm again, filled with laughter and calm conversations. His mother seemed lighter, her smile returning slowly. The staff in the house also noticed the difference. The tension that had once lingered was gone. The billionaire threw himself into his work again, but with a new sense of focus. He no longer saw success as a measure of wealth alone. It was about the peace and integrity that came with it. He received messages from friends and acquaintances when the news of the broken engagement began to spread. Some expressed surprise, others curiosity, but he did not feel the need to explain. The truth was his to know, and he was at peace with it. The people who truly cared for him understood that his decision came from strength, not bitterness. His mother often reminded him that life has a way of revealing the truth at the right time. She encouraged him to let go of regret and focus on gratitude, for the lessons learned and the freedom gained. He followed her advice, and slowly the heaviness in his heart began to fade. In time, he found himself spending more evenings with his mother, enjoying the simple moments they once cherished. Quiet dinners, walks in the garden, shared laughter over small memories. He felt closer to her than ever before, grateful for her patience and wisdom. He realized that her calm strength had been the guiding light through one of the most painful experiences of his life. And though the wound of betrayal would take time to heal, he knew he would emerge stronger. He had learned that love without respect was hollow, and that no relationship could thrive where kindness was missing. He promised himself that in the future, he would never again ignore the small signs that something was wrong. He would choose peace over pretense, truth over illusion, and genuine kindness over charm. As the days turned into weeks, the house returned to its natural rhythm. There was laughter again, warmth in every corner, and a sense of balance restored. He knew life would bring new experiences, new people, and perhaps someday new love. But for now, he was content. He had his mother, his peace, and his integrity, and that was worth more than anything else he could ever own. The billionaire sat alone in his study that evening, staring at the flickering light of the fireplace. The room, once filled with calm and focus, now felt heavy with unspoken thoughts. He had spent weeks trying to understand what had gone wrong. Every memory with his fiancée replayed in his mind, from their first meeting to the moment he caught her speaking cruelly to his mother. It was like watching a beautiful painting fade into something ugly. He couldn't ignore what he had seen, but part of him still wanted to believe there was some explanation, some reason that could make sense of it all. He had always prided himself on being logical, patient, and fair. But now emotions had taken over. His heart felt like it was being pulled in two directions, between the love he once felt for her and the pain she had caused his mother. His mother had never spoken ill of her. Even after that awful moment, she had only said, "Maybe she was having a bad day, my son." But deep inside, he could see that her spirit had been hurt. The sparkle in her eyes dimmed slightly whenever the fiancé's name was mentioned. He decided it was time to confront the truth directly. He couldn't live in the shadow of doubt anymore. That weekend, he invited her over to talk, hoping she would show some sign of remorse. When she arrived, she carried the same polished charm she always did, smiling, speaking softly, acting like nothing had ever happened. He watched her carefully, searching for any sign that the woman he had fallen in love with was still in there somewhere. They sat down in the living room. The silence between them was thick. Finally, he said quietly, "We need to talk about something important." She looked at him, a faint flicker of discomfort in her eyes, but she quickly masked it with a gentle smile. "Of course," she replied sweetly. "What's wrong?" He didn't waste time. I heard what you said to my mother that day. I came home early and I heard everything. His voice was calm, but the pain behind it was unmistakable. Her expression froze for a moment, and then she laughed nervously. You must have misunderstood. I would never say anything to hurt her. Maybe she took it the wrong way. He shook his head slowly. I didn't misunderstand. I heard your words clearly. You called her names, told her she was a burden. Do you realize how that made me feel? For a few seconds, she looked unsure of how to respond. Then her tone shifted. The softness in her voice hardened just slightly. You know how much pressure I've been under. Your mother doesn't make things easy sometimes. Maybe I lost my temper, but everyone makes mistakes. The billionaire's heart sank. Instead of apologizing, she was defending her actions. He studied her face, trying to see if there was even a hint of guilt, but all he saw was annoyance. She's an old woman, he said quietly. She deserves kindness, not frustration. She's the reason I am who I am today. She sighed, looking away. I didn't mean it like that. Maybe it came out wrong. He wanted to believe her, but deep down he knew this wasn't just a misunderstanding. Her reaction told him everything. It wasn't the first time she had felt this way. It was just the first time she had been caught. The conversation ended with distance between them that neither could hide. That night he went to check on his mother, who was reading quietly in her room. She smiled when she saw him, as if to say she didn't want him to worry. But he noticed the gentle sadness in her eyes. You look tired, my son, she said softly. Don't let anger stay too long in your heart. It only makes you heavy. He nodded. I just don't understand how someone can change like that. She closed her book and placed a hand over his. Sometimes people don't change, my dear. They only show who they truly are when they think no one is watching. Her words stayed with him. Over the next few days, he started noticing more things he had ignored before. The way his fiancée treated service staff, the impatience in her voice when things didn't go her way, the small moments of coldness behind her perfect smile. It became clear that the woman he had planned to marry was not the same person he thought she was. He spent long hours walking through the gardens, thinking about what to do. Part of him still loved her, or at least the version of her he had fallen for. But he couldn't let that blind him to reality. He had seen the truth with his own eyes. After a few days, she called him, pretending as if nothing had happened. She invited him out for dinner, saying she missed him and wanted to make things right. He agreed to meet her, not because he wanted to rekindle things, but because he needed closure. The restaurant was quiet, the kind of place where they had shared many dinners before. She arrived dressed elegantly, smiling confidently. As they ordered, she began talking about future plans, their wedding, their new house, the people they would invite. He listened silently, letting her speak. When she finally noticed his silence, she frowned slightly. You haven't said much. Are you still upset about that silly misunderstanding? She asked. He looked at her, calm but firm. It wasn't a misunderstanding. It was a moment that showed me the truth. Her smile faded. You're not seriously going to throw everything away over one mistake, are you? She said, her voice tightening. He took a deep breath. It's not one mistake. It's about character. If you can speak that way to someone who means the world to me, what does that say about who you are? I can't spend my life with someone who doesn't respect my family. Her face turned cold. The sweetness disappeared, replaced by anger she no longer tried to hide. So you're choosing her over me? I'm choosing respect over pretense, he said simply. For a long moment, she said nothing. Then she stood up, her voice sharp. You'll regret this. No one will ever love you like I did. He didn't reply. He watched her leave the restaurant, her heels clicking sharply against the floor, echoing like the closing of a door in his life. When she was gone, he felt a strange calm settle over him, the calm that comes after making a painful but necessary decision. That night, he went home to his mother. She was sitting in the garden looking up at the stars. He joined her quietly, sitting beside her. She turned to him and gave a knowing smile. It's done, isn't it? She asked. He nodded. Yes, it had to be. She reached out and took his hand gently. I'm proud of you. You chose with your heart, not your pride. They sat in silence for a while, listening to the soft sounds of the night. He realized that though the decision had cost him something he once thought was love, it had given him something far greater. Peace. He knew he had done right by his mother and by himself. In the days that followed, news of their broken engagement spread, but he stayed quiet. He didn't feel the need to explain himself to anyone. People could believe what they wanted. What mattered to him was that his conscience was clear. His mother's health seemed to improve in those weeks. Her laughter returned, her energy brighter. The house, once tense and silent, filled again with warmth. He found comfort in spending more time with her, sharing breakfast, talking about old memories, walking through the garden she loved so much. The pain of betrayal didn't disappear overnight, but it slowly turned into strength. He understood now that life had a way of revealing truths at the right time, even when they hurt. He learned that love built on lies could never survive, but love built on respect and care always would. He decided to take a break from his busy work life and focus on what truly mattered. He traveled with his mother to quiet places, the countryside, the seaside, places that reminded him of simpler times. Each day with her felt like healing. He could see in her eyes that she was happy just to have her son by her side, free from worry. One evening, as they watched the sunset together, his mother said softly, "Life always tests us, my son. But every test teaches us who we are and what we truly value." He smiled, feeling a deep peace in his heart. "You were right all along," he said. "People show who they really are when they think no one is watching." She laughed gently. "Then let us always be the kind of people who are kind, even when no one is watching." He nodded, holding her hand as the sun disappeared over the horizon. He realized that the world could take away wealth, relationships, and success, but it could never take away integrity and love. Those were the treasures that truly mattered. And as the stars appeared one by one in the darkening sky, he felt something he hadn't felt in a long time, a quiet joy that came from knowing he had done the right thing, and that he was finally free to live with an open, honest heart again. Weeks passed since the engagement ended, and life slowly began to settle into a new rhythm. The billionaire spent his mornings in his study, his afternoons walking in the gardens, and his evenings talking with his mother. The weight of betrayal had lifted, replaced by a quiet peace. He no longer felt the tension that had filled the house. Instead, he felt free to focus on the things that truly mattered. His mother had been his anchor through it all. She never forced him to act, never pressured him into decisions, and never showed anger toward the fiancé. Instead, she offered wisdom, patience, and calm support. She reminded him that life was full of lessons and that even painful experiences taught strength and clarity. He realized that the bond they shared had grown even stronger during this difficult time. The billionaire began reflecting on his own life and values. He realized that he had been too trusting, too quick to see what he wanted to see in people. He understood now that true character revealed itself in difficult moments, not just in charming smiles or smooth words. He made a quiet promise to himself that he would never allow appearances or flattery to blind him again. Respect, kindness, and honesty would be the foundation of every relationship he chose moving forward. Life outside the home continued as usual. His business expanded, his work required attention, and he found satisfaction in his achievements. But there was a new perspective in his success. He no longer measured accomplishments by wealth or status alone. Peace of mind, integrity, and meaningful relationships became far more important. He invested his energy in supporting his employees, mentoring young people in his company, and engaging in philanthropic work that made a difference. Though the memory of the fiancée still lingered occasionally, it no longer caused him anguish. Instead, he saw it as a lesson, a reminder of the importance of observing carefully, listening to intuition, and acting with clarity. He began to understand that some relationships were meant to teach, not to last, and that ending them when necessary was a sign of strength, not weakness. He also noticed the changes in his mother. She seemed lighter, more at ease, and her laughter returned fully to the house. They began to share moments they had missed for so long, sitting together over tea, sharing stories of the past, walking hand in hand through the gardens. Every day with her felt like a gift, and he cherished the quiet joy of simply being with her. One afternoon, as they walked through the garden, he said, "I never realized how much wisdom you hold. You handled everything with such grace. I feel like I learned more about life from this experience than I ever could have imagined." She smiled, her eyes warm. Life has a way of teaching us lessons we cannot learn any other way. Even when it hurts, it shows us what truly matters. And my son, what matters is that you keep your heart open but your eyes wide. He nodded, understanding fully the depth of her words. He felt grateful for her presence, her guidance, and the example she had set. She had taught him that true strength was quiet, consistent, and rooted in love. The billionaire began to open his heart to new possibilities. Not in a rush to replace the past, but with patience and clarity. He spent time meeting new people, forging friendships and building connections that were genuine and sincere. He approached relationships differently now, with an understanding that trust and respect could never be assumed. They had to be proven through consistent actions. He also reflected on the role of forgiveness in his life. He didn't harbor bitterness toward the fiancée, recognizing that everyone has flaws and makes mistakes. Instead, he forgave her in his heart, releasing the weight of anger and resentment. This act of letting go brought him peace and allowed him to move forward without looking back. Family gatherings returned to the home, filled with laughter and warmth. Friends and relatives noticed the change in him, the calm, grounded presence that radiated confidence and wisdom. People were drawn to him not just for his success, but for the integrity and kindness that now defined him more than anything else. One evening, as the sun set over the horizon, he sat with his mother on the terrace, watching the colors change in the sky. The breeze carried the scent of flowers, and the world seemed still and peaceful. He felt a deep sense of gratitude for the journey he had been through. Every challenge, every painful moment had led him to this clarity, this sense of purpose, and this peace. Life will always have surprises, he said softly. But I feel ready now. I know what I will accept, what I will fight for, and what I will never compromise. His mother nodded, her hand resting gently on his. And you have learned the most important lesson of all, that love is not just about passion or words, but about respect, loyalty, and kindness. Never forget that. He smiled, feeling a sense of contentment he had never known before. The house was quiet, the night calm, and the bond with his mother stronger than ever. He realized that true wealth was not measured by possessions or power, but by the love, trust, and integrity that filled his life. In the days that followed, he continued to focus on what mattered most. He nurtured his relationships, engaged in meaningful work, and spent time creating memories with his mother. He traveled with her, explored new places, and savored simple joys, the warmth of the sun, the laughter of friends, the quiet beauty of life. He also became a source of inspiration for others. People admired his ability to remain calm, make difficult decisions with clarity, and handle life's challenges with grace. But he remained humble, knowing that his strength came not from his own power alone, but from the love and guidance of the woman who had raised him. Time moved on, and the memory of the fiancée became less painful. He carried the lessons she had taught him in his heart, but no longer carried the hurt. He knew now that some people are meant to cross our path to teach us something important, even if they are not meant to stay. As the years passed, he and his mother grew even closer. They celebrated birthdays, holidays, and small victories together, cherishing the bond that had weathered trials and grown stronger. He continued to build a life filled with integrity, kindness, and respect, knowing that these were the true measures of success, and so, the billionaire found peace not in wealth, status, or appearances, but in the simple, enduring values that had guided him all along. He learned that true love and happiness come from respect, understanding, and loyalty, and that the strongest bonds are those that survive trials and remain unshaken by deceit or pretense. He knew that life would continue to bring challenges and unexpected turns. But he also knew that he was prepared to face them with courage, wisdom, and an open heart. The lessons of the past had shaped him, strengthened him, and shown him the way to a future where love, peace, and integrity would always guide his path. And every evening, as he sat with his mother watching the sun set over the horizon, he felt a quiet joy that came from knowing he had chosen rightly, loved wisely, and lived fully, guided by the values that truly mattered.